Welcome to all techies. In today's video, I'm going to talk about MVVM model. MVVM is one of the architecture followed while making Android application. With this architecture, you can create a highly scalable, good quality, and well testable applications. Let's see how we can add MVVM to our app. First, switch to Gradle and add the dependencies for view model and live data. Now you can use either the KTX version or the non-KTX version. Here I'm using the KTX version and the current version is 2.2.0. After that, let's switch back to main activity. The main concern here is that with MVVM model, we do a separation of concern between the model and the view, which is nothing but the activity or fragment. So activity or fragment will not directly take data from the model. Say that you're doing a network call and then instead of writing a network call inside this activity or a fragment, you'll write it somewhere else and get the data using an observer. So view model is a place where you perform all sort of operation, and through view model you set an observer inside activity or fragment. For example, see I have three packages. One is for data, another for repo, and this one is for view model. Now this is my main activity. Inside this activity, I'm not going to call any network call. Rather, I'll just set an observer on this live data, whatever I've written inside this view model. Let's see each of them. Let's first create a repo. So inside repo, you write all sort of things to perform network call or other things like getting from the local disk, cache, or other things. You can write it inside the repo. And you can have multiple repos. About the object, so it depends. You can either use object or you can use class, or you can completely avoid writing all those things and you can use file directly, the Kotlin file. Now here I have used object, which means that this method will be static. Now here I'm just doing a dummy network call. The overall objective here is to show how you can pass content when you get original data from the network. So say that as soon as I call this method, I either return the user ID or I just give a value as like 1 or 2. Now let's see if I want to call this method and want to show the result like for 1 or 2 or based on whatever user ID I have passed on. How can I show it in the main activity? So for that, we have to switch back to view model. Now inside this view model, we have a live data. Live data is an observable component which understands the life cycle of an activity or fragment, which means that in case you are doing a network call or any such operation which is quite heavy, and by the time you get the result, if you have switched back to the previous activity or to the next activity, then it automatically understands that that activity, that screen is not visible anymore, so do not set the data on screen. So by this way, you need not have to manage the life cycles. And here we are going to use the live data. With KTX version of 2.0 version, we have the support for the live data coroutine builders also. What we can do is that this live data is a coroutine builder, which means that this is going to return a live data. And here on the current coroutine context, we are switching it to IO thread, which means that this operation should get performed in the background thread. How can I set the value in my main screen? So here I'm just using the coroutine builders of live data, emitting the source, which returns live data of user information. But now I cannot directly call like perform dummy network call dot value. So what should I do is that in the main activity, I should use an observer and observe the value. So I could say something like the network view model perform dummy network call dot observe. This is nothing but this live data. So on a live data, you have to set the observer and then listen for the changes. If you try to use a value directly without the live data is being active or being observed, you'll get the null values. So the best approach to get the value is always to set the observer and then listen for the values change. This is straightforward approach where I want to perform network call as soon as I launch the screen. But how about if I want to perform this network call based on certain action? For that, what can be done is like you can set a mutable live data and set this mutable live data from your screen, either activity or fragment. As soon as the value of this mutable live data changes, this switch map will get triggered. And whatever code you write inside this, that will execute automatically. Again, you can set an observer on this live data to get the value and then just display the content on your screen. One thing to remember here is that if you want to get the value out of it, then again, no need to use like user ID dot value. What you can do is that the switch map returns the value of this. So if it's of type int, then this is going to return int. If I make it like user info, then this is going to return user info. So this is something which you'll get by default when you use switch map. Again, this concept is same as before. We have live data coroutine builders. Inside that, we are just emitting the source, and this network call also remains same, the dummy network call. Here, whatever user ID which you are passing, the same it's going to return. So it will come here and it will post the value. One important thing to notice here is that because I have switched the context to the IO thread, that means background thread, then you cannot use live data dot value. Mutable live data dot value is meant to set the value when you are on a main thread. But if you are in the background thread, then you should use post value. Okay, so this was all about getting the content from repo to view model, and from view model setting an observer. Through that you'll set the value on screen, either for activity or for fragment. This was a very straightforward concept. Okay, so let's see the methods now. So observe network value is like as soon as you launch the screen, you want to listen for the network call and trigger network call also. So this method is meant for it, where inside this view model we are directly calling the network call without any constraints, no conditions defined. Now if you want to call based on certain actions and based on like some value changes like user ID, then if you want to do a network call, then this method is meant for that. This depends on user ID. When user ID changes, then only it will trigger this method, otherwise it will just ignore it. And here is the place where I'm changing the user ID. So this user ID of this mutable live data gets changed based on the fab click, and as soon as it is getting changed, this you'll get the value here. So this was all about live data, but there's another concept. So this method which you are seeing inside flow, so this remains same because we are going to return the live data. The major change is in the repository. So here I'm returning the live data. There is another way to return the data, which is like you are getting asynchronously, and it's a stream of data. So you can do this by using flow. So flow is a stream API through which you can emit the value as it is coming. But one thing to remember here is that flow doesn't understand about the life cycles. And that is one of the reasons that while using this in the view model, I have used it as a live data. And this is something which you get it directly with the flow. So on a flow, you can just do a like dot as live data, which means that you can use the observer once again, observe the value, and as soon as anything changes, you get the content on screen. So by this way, you need not to bother about the life cycles. Or If you do not want to listen as live data, then other way of getting these values is using collect. So you can use like flow.collect, the object of flow.collect, and inside collect you'll start getting the value. So instead of using live data, here it is get these values from flow. Okay, so that was about the brief introduction of Android architecture component, what is MVVM, and how you can add it to your project. I hope this might be useful for you to understand about how you can add MVVM architecture to your application. If you have liked this video, then do hit this like button, subscribe it, and share it with your friends. Thank you.